Welcome to the NNJR Trackside Classroom Series. I'm Bill Gilbert, one of NNJR's chief instructors, and I'm happy this morning to be running through a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and that if you're a student of driving, one that you'll want to make sure that you understand well. And that topic is smoothness. There's a lot of dimensions to smoothness. You'll see one quote on this slide, but and a few others as we go through. But today, I'll remind people about our normal disclaimer that we offer our best advice here, but you use it at your own risk. So today we're going to talk about what smoothness is, and just as importantly, why we care. Then we'll talk about how to achieve it, or at least some ideas and tips about how to achieve it, starting with some prerequisites and then some concrete steps we can take to make our driving smoother. So what is smoothness? Well, it really starts with the objective, which is to keep the car balanced. And that means just the minimum amount of weight transfer that's needed, or just enough input, or minimal input. I mean, that's the objective is car balance, if we want to remember that. And it comes about from deliberate and precise use of the controls, all the controls, steering, gas, and shifting, in a way that we never upset the car. And if you've ever observed at an autocross, where this is perhaps easier to see than it is on the track, if you look at an autocross and you see a car that looks completely in control versus one that's sliding around a bit, and then if you look at the clock, you will discover that that car that wasn't sliding was indeed significantly faster than the one that was sliding around. And the Alain Prost quote here makes that point. Here's another way to think about smoothness. And this is a phrase many people have heard, that smooth is fast. But there's a reason in physics or car balance that explains it. And that is that if we keep more weight on the inside tires in a corner than by being smooth than if we weren't smooth, the car is going to have more total traction. And Ross Bentley explains that in some depth in some of his books. But there is a technical reason why, keeping the car balanced is indeed faster. Now, before we get into how to focus your driving on smoothness, let's talk about some prerequisites. And some of this is pretty basic, but some of you watching this, I hope, are new to the track, relatively new or brand new. And so I want to make sure we cover these basics. And even if you aren't brand new to the track, these are things that are worth making sure that you check on them when you do get ready to go to the track. So, seating position. Many drivers, before they come to the track and get educated by their instructor, sit too far back. So we want to be seated so that we have, so we're comfortable in the car and we have comfortable use of the controls, and so that we can see properly. And we want our hands, typically at 9 and 3, and not moving them around on the wheel. Now, if you haven't driven your car on the track lately, here's a tip. Just check it out. Is there something blocking your vision? The mirrors adjusted right? Is everything okay in the car? And you can check that out by just put your helmet on and sit in the car, could be in the garage or driveway or whatever, and just soak in the environment. Can you see as well as you would like to see? Are your hands and arms comfortable, all those sorts of things. Again, just a tip to make sure that you are indeed comfortable in the car. Now, on the track, you know that we use reference points, and I'll say more about these in a minute, but let me first a quick review for those of you that are new. You've heard the term line, which describes our path around the track. Well, to drive that line, we use what are called reference points. The first one of those, the classic one, is where we begin to brake, where we take our foot off the gas and put it on the brake pedal. Next is a turn-in, where we begin the process of turning, and we typically have a cone at that point. The apex, which is the where we come the closest to the inside of the corner, and then track out, where we end up at the outside of the track. Now, those are the basic 4 reference points, but if you want to be smooth and consistent, then over time, you're going to want to develop additional reference points. First, you want reference points for turn-in, apex, and so on that aren't cones, so that you aren't caught out by a cone getting hit or whatever. But in addition, you may want an additional reference point between the turn-in and the apex. For example, there might be a black mark on the track, or a patch, or anything like that can give you more reference points. Or perhaps you want more reference points toward track out. Experienced drivers have far more reference points than the 4 that you see on this diagram, and that's one of the things you'll want to work on as you get more experience. Now, again, the basics, we accelerate. In other words, our foot's on the floor, on the gas pedal, on the straights. We brake, we corner, and we repeat that process. The only thing that varies is how much brake, how much steering, and so on. Again, pretty basic, but if you're new, this may not be quite as simple as you may think. Now, a quick review on mirrors. Those of you that have watched some of these in the past know that I'm big on emphasizing mirrors. So to adjust them properly, get yourself seated properly, and then adjust the rearview mirror so that you can see everything behind the car as far back as possible. In other words, you want to see as much of the rear window as you can and as far back as possible. That's probably close to where you are now. What may not be close, unless you've seen this before, is to adjust your mirrors to minimize the blind spots. So to do that, on the left side, we put our head against the driver's window and we adjust the mirror so that we can barely see the back corner of the car. We do the same thing on the right side by leaning our head under the rearview mirror and pushing that mirror out. What happens when we do that is we get, instead of what's common, what you probably have now that you see on the left, where you have a big blind spot where a car can be completely hidden in it, we get to the point where there is little or no blind spot, and you have a much better view of what's going on alongside the car. That's a valuable thing to have on the track, and every time you get in the car to drive anywhere. And I strongly recommend that you make sure you have the mirrors adjusted this way. So those are some of the prerequisites. Now let's dive into how do we get better at being smooth on the track. Well, here's some classic advice. We want to use the controls in a smooth way, not in an on-off way. We want to wind the steering and unwind the steering. We kind of turn the steering progressively and once, and let the car take a set. You may have heard the figure of speech, an egg between your foot and the gas pedal, so that we squeeze the gas or we roll on the gas, as opposed to just jumping on it or pushing on it. If you have a manual transmission, we need to practice smooth gear shifts. So many people with manual transmissions get on the track are in a rush and try to shift real fast. Gear shifts should be 3 motions every shift, out of gear, across the gate, into the new gear. And that's the case whether you're shifting up or shifting down. Braking. We want our right heel to be planted on the floor of the car so that we just pivot our foot from the gas pedal to the brake pedal. We don't pick our foot up and move it. We just literally pivot our foot on the right heel, and we press on the brake pedal initially, and then we press hard. So it's a 1-2. In other words, 1 pressure, 2 hard pressure if we're in a heavy brake zone. But in contrast, when we come off the brake pedal, we want to come off gently, smoothly. Now, almost all of these things are things that you can practice every day in your street driving, and that will make you a better street driver and a better driver on track. So here's some other ideas that we'll quickly talk about in terms of how to improve smoothness. Vision has to be on the list. We have separate classrooms on vision, but looking far ahead and looking where we want to go will automatically make you smoother on track. Because if we're looking too close to the car, we're going to be jerking the steering wheel as opposed to making a smoother track. And we want to look a long ways ahead, not just a short ways. In fact, 20 seconds, according to Skip Barber. So now, most of the time you can't see 20 seconds, but the point is we want to look as far as we can. And again, we have a whole topic on vision you can look at, but the point here is that we want the eyes looking where we want the car to go. That will automatically make us smoother. Second is simply being aware of the controls. We've already talked about using the controls like a rheostat, not an on-off switch. And so just becoming aware of that. And also, if you haven't heard the string theory before, the idea here is that your foot and the steering wheel are connected. So if we're getting ready to accelerate in a corner, but our hands are still turned, we can't accelerate. We have to start to unwind the steering before we can get on the gas. And the same is true in the brakes, of course. We can't be full on the brakes and turn the wheel into a corner, or the car's not going to turn. So these are ways to think about what's happening when you use the controls that will make you more aware of what's going on with the car and automatically make you smoother. So a way to think about how you're using the controls is to focus on the amount of pressure. Think of it as pressure. How hard are you pressing on the gas pedal on a 1 to 10 scale? How hard are you pressing on the brake pedal on a 1 to 10 scale? How hard are you pushing and pulling on the steering? And, thinking about that and being aware of it will automatically make you a smoother driver. Now, one comment here, this assumes that you're relaxed. If you're tense and muscles are all, clenched, you're not going to feel, what's going on with the controls. We do have to be relaxed in the car. And of course, this goes beyond, kind of the basics with the controls, but to be thinking about how much, if you will, pressure or how much control input are we using on the gas, on the steering, and so on. And, if you want to take that the next step, just ask yourself, how smooth am I now? Pick your steering or pick your braking or use of the gas pedal, and just write down in your notebook, am I terrible at it? Am I great at it on a 1 to 10 scale? And again, we're just trying to get the body and our fingertips, our feet, more aware of how we're using the controls. And, we can think about when we turn in for a particular corner, we're doing slowly, we're doing it quickly, are we doing it progressively? Are we applying the brakes in a heavy brake zone, as I described a minute ago, and so on. Use of all the controls. And I'll talk more about brake release in a moment, but that's a particularly important one for those of you that have more experience. And of course, now we can practice and focus on refining it. And again, we can use our street driving to reinforce. And the reason that helps is we get a lot more time on the street to practice these things than we ever will on the track, unless you do a whole lot more track driving than I do. So street driving is how we can refine these techniques. Ross Bentley's written an interesting book that focuses much more on street driving than it does on track driving, but it has a lot of practical advice in it if you want to take, if you want to take this a couple of steps further. And then a final caveat here. We never want to rush or force a control. The only time we should be in a hurry inside the car on the track is if it's an emergency. If we're just driving in all other circumstances, we never want to rush. We don't want to hurry, because if we do, we're going to upset the car balance. Of course, it's harder on the car, may lead to an error, and it may seem counterintuitive, but accuracy and precision, in use of the controls is more important than speed. And in fact, smooth use of the controls is consistent with rapid use of the controls, with the caveat that after lots of practice. If you watch a pro, they move very quickly, but if you watch very carefully in car, they aren't slamming the controls, they're moving them carefully. And unfortunately, modern race cars that we watch now have paddle shifts and such. We don't see very many drivers actually using the gear shifts, for example. But if you go back and watch videos from the day where pros did use manual gearboxes, you'll see that yes, they shift quickly, but they also do it in a very precise manner. And this is a good time to remember that less use of a control is more. In other words, we're just doing the right amount. We're not rushing. So this video attempts to show what I mean by not being in a rush inside the car, using the controls in a smooth manner. Watch the downshift and watch the steering input. Downshift in a fairly heavy braking zone. So 3 motions: out of gear, across the gate, down. Quick steering inputs, but smooth ones, right? Again, no rush, no drama. That's the whole idea. That's what we want to see inside the car. So here's some additional things you might want to try. Try getting a lighter grip on the steering wheel. If you think about a 1 to 10 scale where a 10 is a death grip, do a 4, so that you have control, but you still have plenty of feeling in the fingers and the hands. As I said before, look further ahead. If you have more experience, focus on releasing the brakes more slowly, and focus on where you're releasing the brakes, the so-called end of braking, the EOB. As you get more experience, you need to make that EOB consistent in terms of where it is and the amount of brake that you have when you do release the brakes, and whether you're doing that quickly or slowly. Of course, as a driver, we have to be in shape for driving. So if we're tired or otherwise not up to par, that's not going to help us do better in the car. If you don't feel 110% comfortable, vary your seating position slightly, up, down, forward, back, and see if that helps. And as always, write down what works, what doesn't work, and keep track of that. And over time, you'll know things to make sure that you repeat. So to summarize, smooth is fast, and there's a reason for that in the physics of how we want to keep the car balanced. We can't be smooth if we skip the prerequisites of seating position and mirrors and all the rest. The classic advice, the egg under the gas pedal, the string theory, that advice works. It's a way to think about and get our head, calibrated. And the next step beyond that is to think about the amount of pressure you're using, on the steering and gas, and especially in the brake release. We never want to rush on the track, and we want to relax and be sensitive to the feedback from what the car is telling us. The car will tell us if we're being smooth or not, right? I can ride with you and know immediately. You need to get to that point as well, and so that does the car feel balanced? Is it happy? And if not, why not? And figure out why. And I'll close with the Jackie Stewart quote, which is, it's not always possible to be the best, but it's always possible to improve. And we improve in gentle, smooth, progressive steps. I think that says it far better than I can. With that, let me just thank you for watching, and say that if you do have any questions, please see me at the track, or feel free to send me an email to gilbert4@rcn.com. I'm always happy to talk driving and answer any questions that you may have. So with that, I hope everyone has a great day, and I hope to see you at the track very soon. Good day.